To start with, we will do with the history of satellites. How the space technology started. It started in 1960. It was the vision of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. After 1960, in 1962, the Indian National Committee for Space Research was formed, which was undertaking all these programs related to the space technology. In 1963, the first sounding rocket was launched, and it was launched from Thumba Equatorial Rocket Launching Station, that is TERLS. After 1963, in 1965, Space Science and Technology Center was developed by Government of India, which led to the formation of Satellite Telecommunication Earth Station in Ahmedabad. That was in 1967. We all know about the Indian Space Research Organization, that is ISRO, which was established in 1969, and the Government of India again in 1972 established Department of Space. Presently, ISRO and Department of Space, they are organizing the activities of space technology and related to the space satellites in coordination with each other. So, Indian Space Research Organization, which was established in 1969, and the Department of Space, which was established in 1972, is organizing all these activities. Now, let us see. The first satellite was launched in 1975. So, you see it was almost 30 years back India launched its first satellite, which was named after the first Indian astronomer Aryabhat. From the erstwhile USSR, that is at that time it was USSR, from the Intercosmos rocket into the Earth orbit, and it was all the imagination or the work of Dr. Vikram Sarabhai. The Aryabhat was used for X-ray astronomy and solar physics. After the Aryabhat, the first was Bhaskara 1, which was launched in 1979, and after that the Bhaskara 2 satellite was launched in 1981. Both these satellites were launched from Intercosmos rocket, that is from the USSR, and these were experimental Earth observation satellites. When the Bhaskara 1 and 2 was launched, there were 3 main experiments conducted. The first one was STEP, that is the Satellite Communication Experiment Project, which was conducted in the year 1977 and 79. Later on, before that, the Satellite Instructional Television Experiment site was conducted in 1975 and 76. I am sure you all must be aware of the site experiment, which was one of the major experiments and the most successful experiments through satellite which we covered. This experiment was conducted in 6 states, that was Andhra Pradesh, Bihar, Karnataka, Orissa, Madhya Pradesh, Rajasthan. So, these were basically the educationally backward states. So, the experiment was conducted here. The programs or the programs for children and the adults were telecast through this satellite in the morning and in the afternoon. Both these experiments, the Satellite Instructional Television and the Satellite Communication Experiment Project, that is the STEP, were very successful, which led to another project, that was APPLE. Full form of APPLE is the Ariane Passenger Payload Experiment, which was launched in 1981 by the Ariane launch vehicle of ESA. ESA stands for European Space Agency. So, at that time the satellite was done by India, but the launch vehicle was the Ariane launch vehicle of the European space application. APPLE was the fixed satellite system through which the experiments were conducted. All these 3, the STEP, the SITE and the APPLE, led to the most important one which we still listen about, that is the INSAT. INSAT satellites, the largest communication satellite system in India. In this INSAT, the first series was the INSAT 1 series. Again in 1982 it was launched as INSAT 1A. Then next came the INSAT 1B. All these, the first series basically were just experimental satellites which did not last for a longer period of time because of some problem or the other, but India never stopped experimenting all those things. So, after INSAT 1B, INSAT 1C was launched in 1988, followed by INSAT 1D in 1990. Because the first series were little failures, I can say, so the second series of INSAT were launched beginning in 1992 by INSAT 2A. I have just presented a chronological thing. In 1992, INSAT 2A was launched, in 93 2B, 95 2C, and INSAT 2D was launched in 1997 and 2E in 1999. With every launch, the scientists were more motivated and they developed and launched and designed better satellites and to have it more capacity. Then came the INSAT third series from 3A to 3C, which emphasized on telecommunication. The same in the third series were the INSAT 3D series, which experimented more on the meteorological capabilities of the country. It means it catered to the meteorological part of it or gave data of the meteorological system. After the INSAT 3 series was the INSAT 4 series. The 4 series were the planned and initiated. Under the INSAT 4 series, we will be having from INSAT 4A to 4G. The advantages of this INSAT satellites were, first, it helped the country to expand our TV network firstly. Secondly, it helped us in the telecommunication. You all must be observing how telecommunication has revolutionized in our country. Like the small villages, small block level, taluka level also, we have the phone system here. So, the second major advantage of INSAT was the telecommunication. Third important advantage or the use of INSAT is the network used for educational purposes. I am sure you all must be knowing about it, or you must have read about the UGC programs or the earlier INSAT programs or the earlier IGNOU programs. All these were broadcast through the INSAT by using the facility of INSAT 3B and so on and so forth. And the last and another important use of INSAT is the radio networking, which is also an important development made by India. Along with the INSAT, the Indian remote sensing satellites were also launched. There were few Indian remote sensing satellites which were named as IRS-IA, launched in 1988, IRS-IB, which was launched in 1991, IRS-IC, which was launched in 1995, but in between they named as P2 series. So, after IRS-1C in 1995, the next launch was IRS-1D in 1997. Under the IRS-P series, these were basically the experimental satellites, and the focus of these satellites was on vegetation assessment, snow studies and geological mapping. Each one has again a great deal of elaboration, but here I have just focused on what the use of these IRS satellites P series were, and still we are doing it. This is a picture of Indian remote sensing satellite. I think all of us, we need to be proud of the development of the satellite and how space technology has progressed so much over all these years, and that too in a short span of time, because we started our space technology programs and in 75 the first satellite was launched. Under the IRS P series, we have the P4 series, which is known as the Oceanat series or Oceanat, launched in 1999. The next satellite is called the ResourceSat, which is used for agricultural application. And I am sure you must have read in the newspapers the Cartosat 1 and the HAMSat, which was launched in 2005, that is very recently. This will provide high radio frequencies to broaden our bandwidth. So, if we see right from 1975 till date, till 2005, we have enhancement of each satellite. If you see this photograph, it is the launching of Cartosat 1. After IRS or in between, we had these satellite launch vehicles. Firstly, we were talking about the satellites itself. Now, we will see we had to develop those satellite launch vehicles. Earlier, we were borrowing it, or we were sending our satellites through a borrowed satellite launch vehicles. But India thought that we should also develop, or we should also make our own satellite launch vehicles. So, the first launch was done in 1980 using SLV-3, that is Satellite Launch Vehicle 3. The second and the third launch was in 1981 and 1983. When the first launch was done in 1980, it was failed. So, within 1 year, we launched the second and the third launch vehicle, that was in 1981 and 1983. Next came the ASLV-D3, that is ASLV stands for Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicles D3 and D4, which were launched in 1992 and 1994. Again, we progressed more from Augmented Satellite Launch Vehicle to Polar Satellite Launch Vehicles in 1993, that is we name as the PSLV-3. India became self-reliant and we never had to borrow those launch vehicles from other countries in